I'm presenting this video essay as my response to author Michael Goodwin's discussion on his essay in the book New Threats to Freedom. Having not read New Threats to Freedom, I can only comment from the perspective of Mr. Goodwin's video essay discussion rather than the full context of the book itself. Mr. Goodwin's overarching position is that Americans need to be given the option to fail, not bailed out by educational or government institutions. Mr. Goodwin proposes that the ultimate positive result of that would be a country that is affirmative in producing citizens that are of greatest benefit to themselves and to the country. In his essay, Mr. Goodwin mentioned that educational institutions have become culprits of what he phrases as social promotion, a system of promoting students that are academically unprepared and many times near remedial courses in college. I'd like to address what I see as the root problem of what Mr. Goodwin supposes advances social delinquency. From that standpoint, I'd like to highlight education first. I'll begin with revealing some points concerning the 2002 No Child Left Behind Act, which since its inception has been instrumental in determining the metrics that schools use to be considered successful. If states are to receive federal funding for schools, the Act requires states to develop assessments and basic skills to be given to all students in certain grades. The Act does not assert a national achievement standard. Standards are set forth by each individual state. The apparent fallacy of this kind of latitude is that different states have different degrees of student competencies, causing a possible unilateral standard being set forth by any particular state that has the greatest need to live up to the mandate. Some of the components of the Act are attention to minority populations. No Child Left Behind seeks to narrow class and racial gaps in school performance by creating common expectations for all. Another is the quality of education, ideally increasing the quality of education by requiring schools to improve their performance. Supportive funding. As part of the support for No Child Left Behind, the administration and Congress backed massive increases in funding for elementary and secondary education funding. Though admirable, these components create unrealistic goals. Consider this quote. On August 11, 2010, Alabama State Superintendent Joe Morton said, "There's a fallacy in the law and everyone knows it. According to the No Child Left Behind Act, by 2014 every child is supposed to test on grade level in reading and math. This can't happen," says Morton. "You have too many variables and you have too many scenarios, and everyone knows that this would never happen." Though for different reasons, I have to agree with this opinion and would say that it says it most accurately. There are too many variables coupled with too many scenarios. I realize that citing these components are supportive arguments for Mr. Goodwin's position concerning social promotion. However, to further support Mr. Goodwin's position, we need only look at the benefits of obtaining these desired levels of success for particular schools. The gaming system, as it's called. The system of incentives and penalties set up a strong motivation for schools, districts, and states to manipulate test results. The incentives for improvement also may cause states to lower their official standards. Because each state can produce its own standardized test, a state can make its statewide test easier to increase scores. Missouri, for example, improved testing scores by openly admitting they lowered their standards. A 2007 study by the U.S. Department of Education indicates that the observed differences in states' reported scores is largely due to differences in the stringency of their standards. Another issue to consider is standardized testing. Critics have argued that the focus on standardized testing, meaning all students in a state take the same test under the same conditions, as a means of assessment encourages teachers to teach a narrow subset of skills that the teacher believes will increase test performance, rather than focus on acquiring deep understanding of the full and broad spectrum. More importantly, I think the No Child Left Behind increases segregation in public schools. Studies have shown that many African American students attend the lowest performing schools in the country, and African Americans score considerably lower in almost every indicator of the academic well-being than do children of Caucasian descent. For example, high minority and high poverty schools score much lower on standardized tests than low minority and low poverty schools, but 71% of African Americans attend high minority schools and 72% of African Americans attend high poverty schools. I'd like to make the point that this is not a racial phenomenon, it is a socio-economical one. Whether a child is black or white has no bearing on this result. It is a social and economical condition that is the driving force. Regarding Social Security, which is another issue Mr. Goodwin uses as a case point against social promotion. Social Security was controversial when it was initially proposed. Most women and minorities were excluded from the benefits of unemployment insurance and age-old pensions. Employment benefits reflected typical white male categories and patterns. The Act also denied coverage to individuals who worked intermittently. These jobs were dominated by women and minorities. Nearly two-thirds of all African Americans in the labor force, 70 to 80% in some areas in the South, and just over half of all women employed were not covered by Social Security. At the time, the NAACP protested the Social Security Act, describing it as a sieve with holes just big enough for the majority of Negroes to fall through. In conclusion, though these facts seemingly support Mr. Goodwin's position that this country has indeed created a buffer that strips society of the right to attempt and fail. Left to stand, however, the ideology that the right to fail, if meaning everyone has always had the same opportunity without considering the historical foundation of this country, seems only a sophisticated term that is meant to include a people who, in my opinion, were excluded in the consideration when the phrase "the pursuit of happiness" was written in the Constitution. The right to fail can only be an equitable ideology when our country is ensured that the reality that every person considered has earned that right from the same constitutional benefits of others.